Below the cliff is the sandy beach. Families enjoy themselves throughout the warm summer months. The gulls wheel overhead and little boats make silver trails across the bay. All is pleasant and familiar. They'll have such stories to tell when they get home. But I think it's time for us to go in and enjoy a drink in the shade.
Hello, I'm Peter John Cooper. Yes, the West Cliff, pleasant and ordinary, but I've always had a feeling that there's more to this place than meets the eye. That there's something out there with a story, and it's called the Ambiphonium. I've certainly heard it. Well, I believe I've heard it. Lying awake in the early hours, I have heard a high, whinnying, melancholy trumpet that can only be such a beast. And I think I may actually have caught sight of it lumbering around in the dark, but it's difficult to tell among the deep shadows and pools of orange light from the street lamps. Sometimes, even during the broad daylight, you can hear a sort of energetic snuffling from the depths of the gorse bushes, or you can hear the branches creaking and groaning high up in the pines. It can only be... Shh. Please keep it to yourself. An ambiphonium. Oh, please don't tell anyone. I'm certain if it were known, there would be those who think it should be tracked down. The whole world of zoology would benefit from trying to pin down exactly who or what the ambiphonium is. I should say something, but there are those who might think it could be a lucrative addition to the tourist trade if we could actually catch one, bring it onto the open, maybe even get David Attenborough to make a documentary. Oh, that would certainly put the West Cliff on the map. If that's what we want, but... I don't know. What the ambiphonium's habits are and where it actually spends its time is a complete blank. For most zoology textbooks and websites I've looked in do not include any details of such things. Indeed, its existence is so unmarked that it only appears on the IUNC Red List in the data deficient category. If you search the internet, there are but vague, curt references in the darkest of dark corners of the dark web. Even those recherche sites that deal with conspiracies and other cryptids scarcely mention it. But yet, here it is, existing, if it does, in what amounts to a tiny area of grass and grove and gorse on the cliff top in the heart of modern, bustling Bournemouth. And for the moment, the wind blows round and past it, the salt spray washes over it, the ambiphonium itself is in full, inactive mode at all times. Ambiphons, sights, smells, sensations of all manner and sorts that are our bread and butter, as it were, are just a ragged mass of stuff whirling by, beyond or beneath control, quite out of comprehension to the ambiphonium itself. The only recording of its voice goes something like this.
Swim, swimmy swim. Not things, not anything. A mess of thisness, swimming by, here, crawling, something passing through or by.
As I said before, the unusual thing about the Ambiphonium is how little it knows of ambiphons. These are sensations unsensed that we humans and the rest of the world's species take entirely for granted and live by them. Perhaps there is something here for us to learn, maybe even about ourselves. However, the Ambiphonium does not exist in this state alone, the world washing over it and around it. It is, in fact, made up of many parts. An endosymbiosis, more like a jellyfish or sponge than any other type of creature, within its processing symbiont. Another symbiont that we may call the recognizer is a ragged colony in itself, forming a symbiotic relationship like an interleaved series of Russian doll virtual structures that are always battling, racing to catch up as the world rushes past. This is how I think it works, how its stories evolve.
Sensomaticons are shaken into awareness by the tiny shivers that the ambiphons make on the skin and squash of the Ambiphonium. Meanwhile, the faithful retrievulator is ladling ambiphons up from the puddles of soup stored in the squash below. And here the recognizer is matching the ambiphons within and without, the interior ambiphons matching the shiver and shake from outside, making pretty patterns.
The following is from an account of the world as seen and dictated by an Ambiphonium that was apparently entertained to dinner and interviewed by a journalist in the jungles surrounding the Orinoco or the Congo. The exact geography is not clear from the transcript. The only other interview that an Ambiphonium has given was when one met a military climbing expedition in the Karakorums, and that didn't end well for either party.
I was hoping for more from life. If this is a life, if this is what life is meant to be. But the patterns are nice.
Meanwhile, sociators desperately match ambiphons from the broth, and as each ladleful drains away a significator fishes out ambiphons that are left alive and wriggling. To the Ambiphonium, this whirling mass now becomes populated with phone boxes, fire engines, words, gritty pictures, and a song or two. This matches with that. Thus, the sociator does her job.
This is a colour. It is a fire engine. Definitely a fire engine.
Check, check goes the cross-checkulator, and forming files of the ambiphons, finding boxes, lumping stuff like clay. The world creates itself inside the Ambiphonium. The ambiphonic soup is a slosh of colours and words.
Yes, colours and words. Cross-check, colours and words. It is a fire engine.
And that, the alarmulat sounds, and the reactomaticon aims a vicious kick at the Ambiphonium.
Ow. What?
Here, look at this. At this. This, it has decided, because of the work of the recognizer and the cohorts, is a thing, a something that resides with fire engines and the colour red and is cross-checked by a heavy scent. It formulates into a rose. This is it. This is the thing. This is a word. This, says the significator, is something we may be interested in. This is the rose.
All this 1,000 times every second that ticks by.
Here, look here, at this. You remember this. Here is a song, a word, a smell, an idea. You really ought to... something.
But the Ambiphonium is aware of none of this. It wades on through the scenery, attention being directed hither and yon, with no participation by it at all. The scenery happens to it.
It is a
The
fire engine.
retrievulator, the cross-checkulator, the significator crew recognise, prioritise, and the reactolator reacts, drawing attention to something. Yes, it is a thing.
I have been here before, haven't I? This is part of me and my past. This is me, made from my past, from the deep.
And so the life of the Ambiphonium, swimming, well, not even that, just being, depending on a stream of chemicals that help it partake in the entropy, take in, process, pass on, sense, recognise, curl towards, absorb, become, and later, much later, store up and release, projecting stories. It is the breath of the universe. It is what we do, what we must do, because that is the law of the universe. That is the law that the Ambiphonium must obey. In addition, and just to confuse the poor thing further, the Ambiphonium has ambiphons that are not here, not now. They have been added to the soup, enriching in spicing, pouring in from every second to be ladled up, cross-checkulated, significantalised and associated. They join the fresh ambiphons and together they crystallise into something valid, important, things, and together they have meaning. Well, sadly, I have no pictures of meaning to show you, but I'm sure you get the... Let's try to understand the world this meaning exists in. The meaning does not exist without the Ambiphonium. The Ambiphonium does not exist without meaning.
Swim, swimmy, this is the world. I see that now, but yet, yes, it has learned the conditional state of everything, but yet, its grasp on the conditional is still tenuous, still unformed, unacknowledged. Can we also ask how this Ambiphonium came to be here in this tiny strip of land surrounded by a dense wall of houses and hotels and troubled by stag parties during the summer months? If it is not a relic from the last ice age, isolated here when the glaciers finally retreated to be replaced by the hazel and Scots pine groves, was it more likely washed here by the sea and unable to beat the tides and current, became marooned here without family or friends or a mate? I have no mother or father and no children. I am. Of course, it is not an individual in any sense that we comprehend the idea, as it is made up of all those interleaving mamushkas. It is unlikely that the Ambiphonium will ever meet another, not here, not now. And because of its limited perceptions, it would not even recognise another of its kind if it did. They would pass by and through each other,
completely unaware. It is, as far as we know, destined to live out its existence barely aware of what it is, its stories taken up and shaken away by the breeze. And here is my dilemma. If there is an Ambiphonium galumphing around in the undergrowth nearby, I have to ask the question, is it dangerous? Well, I think I can answer that with a resounding maybe. The fact is, as far as we know, it has not eaten anybody yet. But that does not preclude the possibility for the future. And after all, the meaning of increasing entropy is a growing expanse of possibility. And what about science? Surely we should know about it in depth. Zoologists could perhaps set up a captive breeding program, repopulate the wild areas with them. So far, nobody has bothered. And I'm always afraid of the power of curiosity. You know, the sort of thing that makes us poke a stick into a wasp's nest to see what might happen. The sort of thing we humans do a lot of, but then quickly tire of. And for those of us who live around the West Cliff, we don't have to go looking for it. Perhaps that's a problem. It's just too suburban, too ordinary, too dull to provide any sort of thrill for the trackers with laser night vision cameras and all that other expensive paraphernalia. And perhaps that's the real danger. It is too like us. Its stories too familiar. Perhaps we should be content to know that it is there, and like the orangutans in the jungles of Borneo, it is perhaps best left alone and its habitat undisturbed. So, shh. Well, I hope you enjoyed that tale from the cliff edge. If you did, it would cheer me up immensely if you could leave a little heart emoji on the podcast and share it with your friends. If you didn't, then share it with your enemies. If you want to know more about ambiphons, then just look around. They are everywhere. But please don't come looking for the Ambiphonium. You might just scare it away. See you next week.